Welcome to Gallup Solar's first energy raiser. I'm going to just give an introduction to the day and the concept and what we're doing here for those who haven't been involved yet. The concept of energy raisers is a model that Gallup Solar is adopting to hopefully bring more applied solar applications to homeowners and businesses in Gallup. And the concept is that we utilize installation of solar energy projects with the help of community donated labor, and in this way we can bring the cost down to make solar energy affordable for more people. So this particular project is multifaceted in that we have integrated, rather than just put the solar panel on the roof or on a ground-mounted rack, the panels that we're going to put up today, we have actually pre-built a structure with some community help, which is a passive solar heated greenhouse, which is serving the needs of the local CSA, or the Community Supported Agricultural Program. So we have really good organic vegetables being grown here that people can buy shares of as part of the community. And the greenhouse that we've designed and built here is a passive solar application, meaning that the structure itself is the solar collector without any moving parts. So you have the plastic glazing on the south side of the greenhouse, and on the roof and on the north side is well insulated. So the sunlight that you let in is trapped as heat within the greenhouse, can't get out the backside, can't get out the top, and then partially stored in these blue barrels. You see one outside here, and one of the tasks today is to put some water in these barrels. The barrels serve as what we call thermal mass, which is heat storage, essentially, passive heat storage. So the sunlight comes in to the greenhouse, it gets warm in there, some of it directly hits these darker colored barrels, and the water absorbs the heat from that during the day. At night, when it gets cold and the greenhouse is closed up, that heat is re-radiated. It helps to keep the temperature of the greenhouse higher. I will say, even without the thermal mass, I got a call from Tom. Where's Tom? Over there on Friday when it was snowing not yesterday, but a week ago on Friday. And the message on my voicemail was, it's snowing, it's 2:30 in the afternoon, and it's 75 in the greenhouse. It's awesome. Okay. So with the thermal mass, we hope to be able to retain the heat even better, and this will be able to heat itself throughout most of the year, regardless of the fact that it's still going below freezing at night. So that's one application. What we're concentrating on today is a photovoltaic or solar electric system, and we have 6 panels that we're putting on the roof with your help. And we mount them on the roof. They are going to convert sunlight directly to electricity, and that electricity is going to be, each panel is going to make electricity it can convert it to 240 volts AC. That electricity is going to run through a trench we've dug in the ground and go into a new electrical service that's going to be here. It will run right into the panel of B. Sargent's house here, who is the host of this. And
people should look at the trench.
And you should look at a trench. It's an awesome trench. We dug that on a separate day because that was a lot of work. We rented a ditch witch, and Fitz and I dug that trench. But we're gonna, one of the chores today, because we have enough people to help us out, we're going to mount the panels. We're going to fill the water drums, which should be fairly easy, but that'll be a task. And the other one is for people who are willing to go with the narrow shovel. And since we've dug the trench, it's caved in a little bit, and we need to have a minimum of 16 inches. Would be better 18 to 20 inches. So one task for a few people would be just to clear out the ditch, because next week, we hope, the electrical will be hooked up. So that's the plan.
Didn't show up?
Oh, he did, but we had a little bit of negotiating to do. So, so that being said, what we're doing today is we're putting the panels on the roof, doing the mechanical part. But because this is being tied into Gallup Joint Utilities, and because we're producing enough electricity on this small array on the roof to really hurt yourself, seriously hurt yourself, or even die from the electricity if you're shocked, that needs to be tied into the utility by a qualified electrician. So one of our goals with Gallup Solar over time is to get more tradespeople in the community helping, involved in this process, so they can gain experience in solar applications, because it's a natural extension for what a lot of people know. Electricians know electricity. All they need to know is the specific application. This is all done to National Electrical Code standards. So we'll have an electrician hook it up, and when this is running, hopefully within a week, panels are going to be up today. The power will go into Bee's house, and on a day like today, when the sun is out, even if it's partially cloudy, you'll be producing more electricity than the house uses, and the electric meter will run backwards, and she'll be feeding power back into the utility grid. At night, when Bee needs electricity and the sun isn't out, she'll be drawing it back. So it's called net metering, in that the power flows both ways. And even with this small array here to fit the greenhouse, it's designed and sized to produce about 2/3 of the electricity over the course of a year. Slightly bigger array would produce all the power that is needed in this house. Okay. That being said, this is the...
Tell about the metering, the computerized metering.
Oh yes, and the monitoring of it, which is very interesting. This is a fairly new technology. The panels themselves know, but the conversion process and the monitoring of it, each panel has a microinverter, meaning it's going to invert the power from direct current, which is produced by the sun, to alternating current, which is used in the house. Along with producing that electricity, each of the inverters is going to send a signal, which is actually like a ghost signal sent right over the power lines, not a separate line, but sent right over the electrical line. It's going to be read by a small electric monitoring device. It's called an EMU. It simply plugs into an outlet in the house, and it reads the signal that the information that each panel is putting out. And then we're going to have an internet uplink to a server. We're going to have on our Gallup Solar website, you'll be able to go on and click on and read in real time what's going on with each panel, how much it's producing in the moment, how much it's produced historically. So you can read what it's producing now, what it produced this week, what it produced this month, what it's produced over the past year once you have that much history. So it'll be a good educational tool for people in the community to actually see the results of something like this working. So we're very excited. The technology of the photovoltaic panel is not so new. We've had PV technology really operating on satellites for 50 years, I believe, and they're still running. But the inversion process and the monitoring process becomes ever more sophisticated as we advance with computer technology. So I think it's a really interesting system that will help as an educational tool.
Can you talk a little bit about how these panels versus older panels don't go down when one panel goes down?
Okay, yeah. Using these new, and we can take a look at it. Well, we all get to take a look at it with the panel, but each panel has the inverter built in. Up until now, you would have what's called a centralized inverter, and I have one on one of my homes, and most of them have been put in this way, where the power from each panel links up and then goes into one inverter at the end. Okay, and they work quite well. They have a slight disadvantage to this, or actually significant disadvantage in certain situations, in that if one panel has even partial shading, it shuts down part of the production of the whole system. So even a small amount of shading can reduce your output of your panels significantly. But where each one of these panels has its own processor, its own inverter, if there's shade, before this tree comes down in the late afternoon, there'll be a little bit of shade on the last panels. That would, in the old system, it would significantly reduce the output of the system. But in this case, the panel that's shaded will have a reduced output, but all the other panels will still have a full output. So you get a higher efficiency out of the same amount of solar panel area.
So what would my electric bill look like if I produced 100% of what I used?
If you produced 100% of what you used over the course of the year,
how much would my electric bill be?
Your usage would go down to zero on what you're being billed, but you would still, because you're hooked into utility, and some people here were more instrumental in getting the legislation enabling this to happen, but as I understand it, you would just pay your service fee for being connected to the utility. Is that correct, Don?
Yes.
And what happens if I produce more than I use?
If you produce more than you use, and I don't know what the period of time, I think at the end of a year, is that the end of the year? The utility will even up with you. So if you have a surplus of power you've produced and fed back into the utility, at the end of the year, the utility will settle with you and you will actually get a check from the utility.
Why is there no battery storage to run at night?
Okay, there's no battery storage because if you have battery storage is very useful when you are not tied into the utility grid and you need to store the power because you're completely self-sufficient with your photovoltaic system. If you have the advantage of having the utility to tie into, you essentially use the utility as your storage, so you don't need the batteries. The batteries are a significant cost of a freestanding system, and they actually work great, but it's not necessary here. You could choose to put batteries on if you were concerned that the power went out a lot in Gallup and you wanted to have a backup. You could feed into a small battery bank and do that. In
but
this
then
case,
you'd need another, you'd need to go back to DC.
Yeah.
In other words, these panels you wouldn't
do
use.
that. You're right.
These panels you wouldn't use if you weren't, these are only for grid connected.
Right.
Thing.
You
And
would
also
use
the batteries for this much power You know, I think you see people who have a little solar system at their house, maybe when they're off